Confirmation hearings are due tomorrow for the president's controversial pick to serve as the next Surgeon General of the United States. But is the White House playing politics with your health? A physician who previously served as the nation's top doctor is making some shocking allegations about the Bush administration's health care policy. And joining us now, the former Surgeon General of the United States during the Bush administration, Dr. Richard Carmona. Dr. Carmona, thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks, Wolf. Nice to be with you.
All right, let's get right to the heart of the matter. You say now, almost 6 years you served as Surgeon General, that during that period you were muzzled on many occasions by officials at the White House. Tell us what happened.
Well, I served for 4 years, the statutory term of Surgeon General of the United States. And the message today that Surgeon General Koop, Satcher, and myself gave representing all Surgeon Generals are that there has been increasing marginalization and restrictiveness applied to the Surgeon General when it relates to science.
But you have some specific complaints about what happened to you, and I want to walk through some of that. Give us an example of some outrageous, what you feel was an outrageous thing that they did to try to stop you from talking honestly about science and medicine.
Okay. I'm happy to address those issues, but I want to put it in the context of the larger issue that this is all of the Surgeon Generals speaking about their experiences, which have a common thread. But the previous Surgeon Generals have all said, Rich has had it worse than any of us did during our tenure.
Give us an example. What happened to you that you feel was totally inappropriate?
Well, there are a number of issues, whether it be stem cells, abortion, Plan B, whether it's global health reports, reports that were stymied, reports that were not allowed to develop, that the public needed information, that for political reasons, that information was not allowed to get out.
So how did that happen? Let's talk about embryonic stem cell research. What would happen?
Well, stem cell research, basically, when I did speak out about that in some of my discussions, but it was limited because I was told the policy's already been set. You know, this decision has been made. But as I looked at the American public, there was a lack of knowledge about this issue of stem cells. Really, people were, they didn't even know what a stem cell was, let alone could they make an informed decision.
And so what did they say to you? You can't talk about that?
Well, it wasn't so much you can't talk, but we already have a policy. You don't need to deal with that. Don't talk about it. And people frowned on that if I stepped forward and continued to speak about it.
Well, how would they do that? I mean, how does that happen? Here you are, the Surgeon General. You have to go out and speak. You have to testify. You have to vet all your comments with officials at the White House?
Well, it's interesting you should bring that up. It's not so much officials at the White House. There's people right within the agency itself, HHS, that are looking at that. The
Department of Health and Human Services.
And of course, they have communication with the White House as well.
These are political appointees you're talking about.
Political appointees. But, you know, my speeches were vetted. My speeches were often not allowed to go forward because they didn't have enough political rhetoric in it. There was devoid of science, where I felt I should have been speaking about science, not political issues. I had speechwriters who were constantly in an embattled position because they were trying to reflect my voice on science, yet they were being told more and more to put political things into speeches.
And to make, in effect, political statements.
Yes.
And also, I mean, even a simple thing like going out and speaking about or attending the Special Olympics. This was a shocking little tidbit that I heard, but tell our viewers what happened.
Well, what I tried to do, like all the Surgeon Generals, is to look out at the nation and see where are the health needs that are unmet. And one of the areas I saw, and I put out a report, a Surgeon General's call to action on the health of people with disabilities. I got very involved with the disability community, and Special Olympics was one of those areas. Best Buddies was another, dealing with children with intellectual disabilities. And I was invited to speak at the Special Olympics overseas in Japan. That was denied, but they never gave me an explanation. So I backed away from it. The next year, I was asked to come to a Special Olympics event and a Best Buddies event, and that was also denied. And when I spoke to some of the political folks about it, I was questioned, in fact, almost admonished as to, well, why do you want to do this? I said, well, these are children who are disabled, and I made my case based on science. And I was told, well, aren't you aware that who is behind all of this? Why would you help those people? Okay, meaning people of the other party. And I said,
it wasn't just the other party, it was a specific family.
Well, I'm not going to mention specific names, but clearly I was...
Because the Kennedy family is so involved in both of these projects.
Right. And I was admonished and I was told, no, you can't make the trip. My orders were not approved. So I had made a commitment already to the group, not a political family, but to children who had disabilities, who needed a voice. And I took time off and I went on my own dime, so to speak, to be with those children and participate in their organization.
And were you told, and this was during your testimony, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you had to mention President Bush at least 3 times on every page of a major speech?
Well, I wasn't told, but I can tell you that my speech writers were, in fact, often had my speeches vetted, and they would count not only president, but different names that were in there and political messaging, and if it wasn't there, they wouldn't approve my speech. Finally, my speechwriters quit. They left. We got to a point where I told them, don't fight it anymore. Just let them put what they want in, because I'm not going to use it anyway. I'm speaking to the science that the American public needs, not the politics. Other people need to deal with the politics. But let me make the point also, Wolf, that Surgeon General Satcher, Surgeon General Koop, and other Surgeon Generals had the same problem. It just has become almost intolerable now.
Who did this? You want to tell us, name some names?
I'll tell you why I don't want to name names, because I think it's going to detract from the overall issue. I think many administrations have complicity in allowing this to develop to this state. And the reason we had 3 Surgeon Generals today is to show you that through liberal administrations and conservative administrations, this problem has been perpetuated.
All right. Without mentioning names,
yes.
How high of a level did these instructions, did these orders come from?
Senior appointed officials. Very senior appointed officials, and they were different depending on the issue, whether it was a global health report, a preparedness report, whether it was stem cells, whether it was a Plan B. I mean, there were different people that were involved, but there was clearly a political agenda that's different than the public health agenda. And believe me, I understand the political agenda. All I'm saying is the Surgeon Generals need to have the ability to transparently, openly, and honestly speak to the American public about issues of health and science that are important to them.
And you believe the health of the American public was badly served as a result of this political pressure on you?
What I believe is that in a democracy, we should never restrain free speech, and Surgeon Generals should never be restrained from speaking about prudent science, not policy, not political agenda, but giving the best science to the American public so that they can make their decisions and hold their elected officials accountable based on policy that is ostensibly passed on their behalf.
Here's the statement the White House put out in response to some of your criticisms. As Surgeon General, Dr. Carmona was given the authority and had the obligation to be the leading voice for health of all Americans. It's disappointing to us if he failed to use his position to the fullest extent in advocating for policies he thought were in the best interest of the nation. We believe Dr. Carmona received the support necessary to carry out his mission. That's a carefully crafted statement coming from a White House spokesman.
Sure. Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, you know, I've seen these kind of responses before through my administration as well as through the previous Surgeon Generals. But I don't think there's any reason to be defensive. The Surgeon Generals and I, Surgeon General Koop, Surgeon General Satcher, representing all Surgeon Generals, basically did not point fingers. We purposely wanted to address this issue as a systematic failure because the public is not being represented well. And rather than looking back and pointing fingers at who did what, let's move forward and fix the system so it benefits the American public efficiently and effectively, and not perpetuate this dysfunction that has been part of the Office of the Surgeon General for a long time.
We're going to leave it right there. Dr. Carmona, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, sir.